Greetings to everyone. I am Crescent and I would like to showcase my latest entry in my 3D recreation of Yu-Gi-Oh! Art series. Today, I would like to present to you Maxx. Maxx was released as a secret rare in the set Storm of Ragnarok on February 8th, 2011 for the TCG. It is a level 2 Earth Insect effect monster with 500 attack and 200 defense. The effect reads, during either player's turn, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. This turn, each time your opponent special summons a monster, immediately draw one card. You can only use one Maxx per turn. During 2010, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game was just starting to ramp up in speed. And by that, I mean that special summoning was now becoming the main focus of the game. Each player is only allowed to normal summon one monster per turn. However, special summoning has absolutely no limitations. In the previous year before Storm of Ragnarok, some of the most competitive decks were X-Sabers and Infernity, both of which had built-in mechanic to special summon. At that time, there were also some powerful normal summoning decks as well, such as Frog Monarchs and Gravekeepers. More special summoning focused decks would be entering the meta when Maxx was released, such as Plant Synchro and Six Samurai. As the years pass by and we move along with formats, we start to see that most of the meta decks are now special summoning more than ever before. Windups, Dragon Rulers, Stellar Knights, Zodiacs, Gokis, it does not slow down. This is the result of power creep. When a new booster set is released, the newer cards need to seem more appealing than those of what we currently have. So by increasing the power level of those new cards, competitive players would choose to play with the newer, more stronger cards. This cycle would continue indefinitely. On Maxx's release, it was more of a side deck card, something you'd put in your deck going into game 2 or 3 after you discover what deck you are playing against. However, as more special summon focused decks come into the meta, the value of Maxx increased to the point where having 3 copies in your main deck was integral. Maxx's activation condition was so lenient that the card can be used at practically any chain link or open game state. That means that you can activate it in the standby phase, so any summon that does not start a chain in the main phase and so on will allow you to draw a card. Yet, most players would agree that the best time to activate this card would be in response to a card that would special summon. Let me give you an example. Tour Guide from the Underworld states, when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one level 3 Fiend monster from your hand or deck. Since Tour Guide's trigger effect starts a chain, you can respond to it with Maxx's effect. At this point, Tour Guide's effect cannot be cancelled, meaning at resolution, you are almost guaranteed to draw a card. Notice your hand. You spent a card to gain a card. At this moment, you have no net lost in card advantage, much like the card Upstart Goblin, without any downsides, but also, you put your opponent in a difficult position. Your opponent now faces the infamous dilemma many duelists have now since named the Maxx Challenge! Here are the options they must choose. They could either A. Stop their turn at this moment and leave the field extremely vulnerable but refuse to let you draw any more cards. Or B. Continue their play and attempt to end the game this turn out of fear of the powerful turn you will have with your absurd number of cards at your disposal. Option B has a catch though. At any point, if you were to draw a hand trap such as Effect Veiler, you can disrupt their turn as much as you can to prevent them from taking that win. Maxx was universally played in most decks. In order to offer variety in deck building and to allow future special summoning focused decks to thrive, Maxx would be semi-limited, that is, placed at 2 copies per deck, on August of 2016 for the TCG. Then, on the following ban list on March of 2017, it would be limited to 1 copy per deck. Finally, almost a year later, on February 5th, 2018, Maxx would be banned from play and would remain at this status as of this video's release. Maxx's placement on the Forbidden and Limited list has always been a strong debate among duelists. Many advocate for the card to be placed at 3 copies per deck. Their reasoning lies in the fact that the OCG region has had Maxx legal at 3 copies since its release, aside from 1 ban list on October 1st, 2017, where it was semi-limited. Having Maxx at 3 would allow duelists to fight back the heavy special summoning storm that is the current meta. Many others would state that the card needs to remain forbidden, as this hand trap's strength is far too great. The one thing that most players can agree with is that Maxx should not be limited or semi-limited. Reason being is that the likelihood of drawing your 1 or 2 copies of this card on the first turn would be far too luck-based. If a player drew their 1 copy of Maxx but their opponent did not, then the first player would be at a huge advantage. And so, the discussion of Maxx's placement continues to this day. Taken from us, for reasons proven or not, Maxx's time with us has been noted, and its mark in Yu-Gi-Oh! History has touched my heart. As for my 3D recreation, this is the 6th entry in my series. The reason why I chose to create Maxx was because I wanted to test myself when it comes to this fisheye lens view. It took some time to get right, but I figured it out. Also, I haven't made an episode of a card that doesn't glow auras everywhere. I broke the image down to 7 components. Those components being the room, drawers, the TV and its stand, DVD player and sound system, the eyes, the shadows, and the purple fog. The wall is just a simple plane. The floor, however, took some thinking. Since the camera is so low to the floor, I needed to model it in a way that shows off its detail. For me, the best outcome was to take a low poly sphere, stretch it horizontally, and duplicate them 1,801 times to get this look. Yes, I counted. The artwork has us believe that the floor is some sort of bamboo mat. I could only assume bamboo mats are more common in Japan than it is for the West. Up next, we have the drawers. Well, wait a minute. Is that right? Hold on. What? Okay, I need to go off topic here. Hold the Yu-Gi-Oh! I went through my entire life believing that this little piece of furniture is called a drawer. I just learned that a drawer is the part that you pull out. Okay, I can get behind that. So it must be called a dresser, right? Haha, wrong. It's actually called a chest. Go ahead, search it yourself. Just make sure you add the term furniture in that web search. So the difference between a chest and a dresser is that a chest is vertical and dressers are horizontal. What we normally know as chests more specifically are actually called storage chests. With all this confusion, I now understand why mimics are so dangerous. Anyways, this thing was modeled, texture, whatever. Moving on. Now, the TV and the stand was modeled and textured like normal. One thing to note here, and along with much of the other props in the scene are these highlights. I wanted to replicate the artwork as much as I could. I couldn't find a correct light angle to have these shine in the correct place. So instead, I made a very thin plane as a completely different object, applied a white gradient textures with transparency, and placed them right in front of the actual furniture. To me, it looks perfect without trying to set up a better lighting system. The glass was also really cool to make, but it is quite difficult to explain. Let's just say that the shining reflection was me telling the program how to generate it this way. The shine is not just the texture painted on an object. Here we have the sound system and the DVD player. Let me show a close-up on these since I am quite proud of them. As mentioned before, the highlights are thin planes with transparent gradients. Not only that, but most of the details are also just planes with transparent textures. The digital clocks are little stretched octagons, the logo is just a shaped plane, and the dial is also a textured plane displaying a gradient in a radial format. I even took the time to create this little vent right here on the side, just like the card art. The glowing eyes were very simple. They are just planes that display X's on them. It was as simple as animating them around in circular movements. The glowing was also done in post-editing. At first, I wanted them to move around the furnishings, as if there was many more of them hiding underneath. However, the X's imply that you are being stared at. You have their attention, and like most insects, they're waiting for you to make the first move. And oh boy, does that not go well. As for the sixth layer, we have the shadows. Like the rest of the effects in the scene, they are just flat planes with transparent gradients on them. The shadows are in front of the furniture, but the eyes are glowing through them. That is why, to circumvent this issue, the shadows became their own layer. So, in post-editing, I can place the shadow in front of all the objects, but place the eyes in front of the shadow. Lastly, we have the purple fog. After my last few projects, this is something I am familiar with. They were generated using an animated noise texture while using a color ramp to change the color. There is one thing different about this texture that is different from anything I've done. How did I get it to wrap around the camera? Well, I had the camera placed inside a sphere and adjusted the levels of the noise textures to line up just right. I think the fisheye lens view helped to round it out. With each project I complete, I learn more and more, always aiming to do better than the last, striving to create bigger and better pieces to share with all of you, to express my love for this game. If you enjoyed this animation and would like to influence future episodes, I have a Patreon where fans can suggest and vote on what cards will be recreated next. It would also help greatly if you would consider subscribing to me, as having your company for this journey would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful day.